Should. I don't have a pen. Oh, no.
Okay, so what y'all doing?
That's me. Bring my glasses. No, this is
The timer has started. Thank you all so very much for coming today. We're going to go ahead and call the Governor's EMS and Trauma Advisory Council Education Committee to order. First, roll call. Jody Harbert here. Gary Bonewall.
here.
John Creech.
Here.
Dr. Gonzalez. Jeff Hayes. Robert Nappage.
Here.
Greg LeMay.
Here.
Laura Lefevers.
Here.
Oscar Salazar. Lance Villers.
Here.
Kelly Weller.
Yep.
We have a quorum. I'd like to thank each and every one of you all for being here today. We know the weather was a little treacherous for some, and it's going to get a little bit worse, but everyone's commitment is always shown, and we appreciate you guys being here. Couple of items. First is that it's always that time of year when we have appointments, reappointments, and saying farewell to some. We had a lot of applications, and there wasn't one application in there that was not stellar. There were a lot of good folks in there who want to serve and who want to be on this committee. And just because one wasn't chosen doesn't mean that it wasn't a hard decision when the group met to make sure that we're trying to represent as well as we possibly can and deal with some issues coming down the road. So we reappointed Dr. Robert Gonzalez, Lori Lefevers, and Oscar Salazar, and new members will be Jay Cloud and Taylor Ratliff. That's actually Dr. Taylor Ratliff. So those will be our new members, and we will see them at the meeting in January. We'll pick the date here shortly. Toward the end, we've got some thank yous for Gary Bonewall and for Robert Nappage, who will be leaving us both here today, who have served, who will continue to serve in civilian capacities. And we can't thank them enough for their work, but we'll give them an official thank you as we move closer toward the end of today. Oscar Salazar?
Present.
Okay. We still have a quorum. There has been a lot of talk and a lot of discussion over the last several months from a lot of the educators in this room and many not here in this room reference item 1. And this is reference Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board's recommendation on proposing, recommendations proposed to reduce associate degrees from 72 hours to 60 hours and the effect that this would have on EMS programs. If you're not aware, under Chapter 9 of the Education Code, and then Section 19, Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board proposed amendments to 9.1 concerning definitions for program development for two-year colleges. I think the initial intent of these amendments was to incorporate some existing rules and provisions into two-year institutions of higher education to allow them to limit the number of credit semester hours, and for those hours required for students to complete or to award them an associate degree. The minimum number of hours that were required by what's called SACS, Southern Association of Colleges. If you're in college, everybody here knows whenever SACS comes, because SACS just left our college this past week. It's kind of like Joint Commission for the hospital. Determines, yeah.
Gives me shivers thinking about it.
Yeah. Determines if there's a compelling academic reason for requiring additional semester credit hours to award the degree. Some of the contractual agreements were repositioned into text, and some rules had to be worked out, some definitions had to be looked at, because this amended rule would affect students entering and enrolling in public institutions of higher education on or about 2015 in that fall semester. There are some positive things and negative things about going to 60 hours. When we first started looking at some of the emails, everyone was a little concerned. Could we do it? We've had some programs that have been able to make some of those changes to probably meet the 60 hours. However, there was some things that were said that probably were not quite true, and someone sent me a statement that said they felt like the benefits of administering the amended section would increase the standardization of associate degrees completion requirement for public colleges in the state. They went on to say that there's no effect on small business. Well, I don't think many of us think that's quite true. I think the quality and product of the student that we put out, I would dare say that every college and university here today works really hard to get done what they need to do in the hours that we have. To reduce those hours is going to not only cause a problem for small business, but when we look at the impact of employment, change in hours, change in contractual agreements, faculty workload, salaries. And what I want everybody to understand, this is not just EMS programs. This is every associate degree, period. This is every bachelor's degree, period. We're also looking at bachelor's degrees going to 120 hours, okay? Part of the reason for this, and there was, when we look at standardization, whenever we do that, we know that those of us in Texas go, well, we're not real fond of standardization sometimes because we have some other things that are probably unique to Texas. I will tell you this is not unique to Texas at all. As we look at this affecting workload and calculations and going to hours, it also makes us look at how can we train and educate the personnel that we have in less time. Many of us have looked and said if it requires a license or a certification, probably lowering hours is not the best thing to do. If we're looking at trying to take care of patients, we're looking at an industry that changes with technology, it changes with educational requirements, and to find that compelling academic reason, which was defined as a justification for an associate degree program consisting of more than 60 semester credit hours, acceptable, justifiable, or programmatic accreditation requirements, statutory requirements, and regulations for licensure and certification of graduates. Well, that kind of fits us, doesn't it? Because we have almost every one of those in all of the programs that we have. We're going to start kicking out some terms here in a minute, like WECM and GIPWE, and we'll try to explain all of those as we go. Typically in most colleges, if you look at the GIPWE, which is the Guidelines for Instructional Programs for Workforce Education, we'll look and use the ratio of 16 contact hours for one semester credit hour. When we start to look at those, if you have, a 1,000-hour program, you're at 62.5 hours. This doesn't include the core curriculum, which can be an additional 12 to 15 hours. So I think today, looking at the new rule, looking at where it's coming from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, we look, right now I think we currently have 35, and Mr. McDonald, you might want to help me, I think we currently have 35 accredited paramedic programs in the state of Texas, and probably about 28 of those offer associate degrees. So just from an EMS standpoint, this is huge for us. And I'm looking in the room to see Tarrant County and Collin County and other Hill College and several others that I can just look at and see that are here in the room. I don't have my glasses on, so if you're in the back, you're just blurred. So I don't want to leave you guys out. But what I'd like to do today is to kind of open this up to the committee for comment from the committee, but even more so to get public comment on colleges, universities, thoughts, programs. How have you looked at yours? Because I think everybody's looked at theirs to see, can they do it, can they not do it? This would really, I think, like for this to be more of a think tank or a work session, if you would, to get a lot of ideas from a lot of people on not only the direction, but how you're getting it done? Or do we need to look at the exemption? I can tell you I've gotten emails from about 7 to 12 programs in the area, and 8 of those are saying exemption, 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 because we feel like in healthcare we need that. If there's something specific that we need to look at or some definitions, let's do that, because we have to demonstrate a lot of competency in our program, whether it's clinical, whether it's lab, whether it's didactic. There's a lot of information. So let me just open this up to committee members first for your thoughts, and then we'll start with public comment.
Jody.
Yes, sir.
Now, not that we would ever want to be like them, because I'm going to say the word and people are going to get mad, but how is the B&E looking at this?
From what I understand, nursing is going to look for the exemption.
For all their programs? Or
No, just for the 7 to 8 programs that I've talked about for allied health. Many of them are looking for the exemption. I have no information from the big group. Grab a microphone. They can't hear you.
The NLM said no, that they had to be at 60, period. So the nursing department at my program is scrambling.
Committee? Lori?
Just to add into the discussion, at the GIPWE manual and the coordinating board and the definition of a certificate, if you have a certificate program at your college, your certificate program is limited to 42 hours. And so the other hours up to 60, that is 18 credit hours, is open to core curriculum. And the GIPWE only requires, for SACS-approved programs, 15 core curriculum hours. So what's happening at my college, at Grayson College, is that we're cutting core curriculum from our associate degree, because we have 71 hours currently in our associate degree program. And we really quite literally had discussions about whether, because of the limitation of 60 hours, whether to keep Anatomy and Physiology 1 and 2 in our program. And we're actually removing Anatomy and Physiology 1 and 2 from our program and substituting a 1-semester biology A&P survey to fit 60 hours. That's the only way we could do that, but our college is not going to ask for an exemption for any of our associate degree programs.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Public comment. I'd like to hear from any college, any university here, because I know you've started looking at it. Tell us what you're thinking, tell us what you've looked at, and I knew the first one would be.
Almost kicked. Hi, Jeff McDonald with Tarrant County College here in Fort Worth, and welcome to the great city of Fort Worth and Tarrant County. And we were planning better weather, then they heard the state was coming, and they changed that. My college, in its infinite wisdom, decided that we were going to go with this new implementation by this fall. So we have already gone through all the rigmarole of all of our curriculum instruction changes, all in preparation of trying to do 60 hours. Last week at our, I guess the second to last curriculum instruction hearings that we had, they finally looked at us and said, "You're doing what?" And now they're looking at going back and trying to find some exemptions. Because it's kind of been a tough road as far as all of the different programs. I know nursing, I think Tyler College has a grant to try to figure out how to put nursing into a 60-hour curriculum, which is just ridiculous. You look at a 72-hour nursing going down, they're cutting 1/5 of their program. You know, 1/5 of nursing. I can think of one course you could take out real quick that has to do with whining a lot. But other than that, everything else is kind of important in nursing. Sorry, did I hit a straw? Never mind. One of the things that to me was a really big issue, I want my students to be able to leave my program and go see Lance and get a bachelor's degree. But to do that with what we had we have a major hole because Lance, because he's mean, and it's all because of him, he requires, is it 45 core hours? 42 hours of core. With the 15 that the state requires, we are still, help me with the math on that, 27 hours short. They have to go through another year of college just to go from associate to start a bachelor's program. And there's something really wrong with that. In my process of trying to redo it, I got 15 hours of good core into my program, plus a little bit more just so that they could go with the transfer. But to be able to do that, I don't have any more pharmacology in my program. EMT is out of our curriculum. We have EMT as a certificate, so if they want funding, they have to go through it through a different process. We are cut to the bone. And what bothers me is that I was always proud of the fact that we were a college-level paramedic program because we had from our basic program, then we had college classes on pharmacology and medicine. Those have all been cut. We are really nothing more now, or we will be if we go with this, nothing more than a standalone paramedic program that also offers some college courses so that you can say you have a degree. And the whole goal was hopefully that they would go on and get that bachelor's degree where they get those additional courses. And I think that's a big hole. We need to find a way to really get the core curriculum done and make it easy for them to transfer, because both of those have to be there. If we have a 60-hour course that has only our 15 hours of core, we're not having a transferable curriculum, and that's sad. I think the other thing that we're finding is that people are saying that we've got this core curriculum that has a set number of hours. We have 1,000 hours in our curriculum. You can go through the GIPWE and manipulate every hour in there and take every one of those courses and drop it by an hour. And really all we're doing is we're messing with the students because they're not getting the financial aid backing for what they could get. They're working the same amount of time without getting the college curriculum, without getting the college recognition. And that's another big flaw. I know that's what our respiratory therapy program did, our dental hygiene program. They all manipulated their hours, so they took what was a kind of a reasonable credit for a clinical or a practicum and pretty much gutted it. Students are working an awful lot of time to get 1 hour of credit. And that's not fair to the students. I realize what the state was doing. The state's looking at reimbursement. It isn't so much the scholarships and things, it's what the state reimburses for every student in a seat. And they want to make sure that they don't have people, and Tarrant County College told me, I don't know why I listened to them, that we have students at our college here in Fort Worth who have over 200 hours in residence at Tarrant County College.
And no degree.
That's silly. And that's it. It's their choice. But eventually, and this is what this new rule will do, is it will set a minimum number of hours you can take before you have to start paying without reimbursement costs. You have to start paying out-of-state tuition. And I think that should be one of the first things to do, is put a handle on that. But somewhere along the line, I think this should be our mission for the next couple of meetings as we're looking through this. I would love it if every single one of us had the same common goal. WECM was a great start, but it didn't quite do what we wanted it to. But if we could all come up with a plan of how we're going to allow transferability into the senior colleges, how we're going to make it so that we all know kind of what we're doing as far as when we have EMS 101, that it's all the same across there. Because what WECM did at first is not going to be what we're going to end up with. We're going to have people that are manipulating those hours so that they can get those high numbers in their program without having the high credit in their program. And that's something we really have to think about. And I think we have to be reasonable too. If we set a minimum of 72, we have to remember that in some parts of the state, it does take twice as much clinical hours to get the same amount of experiences. So it really probably does make sense that we have some rural areas that are at a 72-hour associate degree. Some places in the urban settings probably don't need near that much because we have clinical experiences that are very close to us, and we don't have to spend as much time trying to get the same amount of patients. I think we do have a lot of work ahead of us. We have an option of trying to get the state. Isn't Temple working on, you're one of the colleges that stood up. Our college rolled over and took it. Your college kind of started fighting it, and I think that's what we need to do. We need to find out from the coordinating board, and I think they're willing to listen. We just have to give them a nice, rational decision of what we want to do and have a plan. And I think over the next couple of months, that should be our goal.
Dr. Greenberg? Thank you, Jeff.
Bobby Greenberg. I'm actually speaking for several organizations while I'm standing here as I was thinking about it. As the representative to the council as an emergency physician, I actually get to speak for the Texas College of Emergency Physicians. Also, as the chairman of the EMS Medical Director Committee that just met prior to y'all, we discussed this and we are in complete support of an exemption. And then I actually serve with Aaron on the Temple College Advisory Committee where we discussed this. Temple College is for an exemption. And I think it's for the exact reason that you said. This is 60 hours doesn't fit. And if you ask any of the medical directors, any of the doctors, and this isn't a negative, we don't feel like people come out overtrained. We're not saying that they're undertrained, but you're sure not overtrained, just like the doctors aren't overtrained. So cutting back on these hours makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I understand the bigger picture, but I think all allied health, but EMS particular, should push for the exemption. 60 hours is just not enough, and I didn't even think about it till I heard the last speaker. I would like to see all the paramedics go for their bachelor's. I think that just further increases the professionalism of pre-hospital care. So I think this would be a step backwards. This would be a big step backwards. So for all the people I'm representing, we're in favor. We're opposed to the 60-hour limit, in favor of the exemption if that's the only way to do it. But we need to do what it takes to educate our people appropriately for our patients and for the safety of those people who are going out in the workforce. They need to know what they're doing. So,
Any questions
sir.
for Dr. Greenberg?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Very nice.
My name is Justin Chance. I'm clinical coordinator at Lone Star College, and I cannot speak on behalf of Lone Star College, but I can speak to you from the perspective of an EMS educator and a student who I graduate from Sam Houston State University with my bachelor's in December, and I graduated from a program with that required 67 hours for the associate's degree, and coming from that program, I still almost felt underprepared for what was ahead of me practicing as a licensed paramedic. Not only that, but it wasn't until I have almost completed my bachelor's degree that I have a better understanding of EMS as a whole and how to interact with patients. Honestly, if we don't push for, my opinion, if we don't push for an exemption, then we're going to lower the standards so low that I would almost be ashamed to be called a paramedic, because I would not want that practitioner to come work on my mom, my family, or even me. I'll drive myself to the hospital. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Blankenship?
Yes, sir. Deidre Blankenship, Hill College. My dean has actually been tossing this around for about a year. So, hey, this is coming, this is coming, this is coming. And she's like, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't have a clue. I said, let me get through accreditation first. So now that we're done with accreditation, thank you very much. She said, now we need to address this. I thought about just taking EMT out of it. That would put us at 59 hours. But she says, no, it has to be 60. And so then we also talked about playing with the Wickham courses, changing the credit hours worth, but she is pushing for talking about exemption after I get back from conference. I think that's the route that she wants to go, and using accreditation as our push to use that exemption excuse. Again, not an excuse, but push, I guess. So until then, I mean, I don't know. You know, I went to UTESCO, their bachelor's program, and coming into that, you know, I felt underprepared too from where I went to college as well. And it was just a little over 60 hours. It wasn't very much. So bare minimum, skirt by, and not have a clue what you're doing whenever you get out there in the field. So.
Questions? Thank you.
I forgot, I know it's hard to believe that I forgot something. One of the things that I remembered that I was going to talk about, right now what we're trying to do is we're trying to survive what we have. And it was interesting that we're listening to the medical directors in the previous meeting talk about the things we have to start adding. We also need to start looking about really how we're going to standardize critical care, community health paramedics, and putting paramedics really kind of at a little higher level than what we are now. We can't do that in the course that we have designed as we are, and as we go down to 60 hours, we definitely can't do it. And that's something else we need to kind of think about, is how we're going to really grow our industry. And I realize part of that is we just make Lance responsible for that, have the senior colleges do it. But we have to decide how much of that has to be at the bachelor's level and what we can do at the associate's level.
Thank you. Mr. Shiplett?
James Shiplett at Collin College in McKinney, Texas. We are pretty much taking the stance that if they mandate the 60 hours, we'll go with that. Our college is not going to ask for an exemption, which really chaps the nurses' nursing program because they have been at 72. One of the things that we have done, history, is with the new EMS educational standards, we actually attempted to massage our 42-hour certificate program, which affects our degree, keep it at 42 hours, but lengthen the time to be able to cover all the aspects of the new EMS educational standards. The pathophysiology, the increased pathophysiology, lifespan development, the research, some of the stuff that we didn't have in the program. So now we've increased it, and now they've come back then and told us that we have to decrease hours. We're trying not to do that with our core paramedic classes. We're trying to look at some options like Grayson with taking the A&P classes, combining them into one and using that biology 2404 class, which is A&P for health sciences. So we're looking at some different things. In regards to what Jeff said from Tarrant College, we're actually looking to see if we can massage all of this around and come out with an Associate of Science degree that would transfer to a four-year university for a health science program, specifically an EMS program. So we don't like it, but we're not going to ask for an exemption. The only way that my dean told me that we would ask for an exemption is if several other community colleges in the state would also ask for an exemption. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Shiplett. I saw you get up a second ago. Okay.
Just to add to what Mr. Shiplett said, my dean did say that a bunch of us in the community and in education, especially at the college level, should get together for the exemption, because that, you know, running like a bull, all of us together should give more of a push for that exemption. So, you know, she just said it'd be better if we all talked to each other and went in one big whoosh to ask for the exemptions.
Thank you.
Another factor to add into the discussion as well is that community college nursing programs are looking at the possibility of offering bachelor prepared nursing at the community college level. So you should know that that's in the discussion and mix as well.
Any other public comment? Any other comment from committee? Just you, Ms. Weller?
Well, as a proponent of higher education, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that less education is better. I'm also not going to tell you that, I respect some colleges really need 60 hours. We ain't English majors, folks. And I understand that credit creep. I mean, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, this is what it was then. It was 60 hours and 120 hours. But credit creep has gotten in, and I think it's a little bit different now. Some allied health professions are looking at considering themselves terminal degrees. I don't know if that fits for us, but I think an exception is definitely the way to go on this. Unless you think our statewide pass rates at the paramedic level are stellar and we can do with less education. And I don't know that that's the case. some of the required courses, if we cut those out, we're basically not creating a well-rounded citizen, or we're not creating a well-rounded person or a well-rounded paramedic. I don't think that less is better in this case. Under the plenary power of the state, the Texas Department could, in fact, move forward and make a recommendation on our behalf, because under plenary power, it says that the state has a responsibility to protect the citizens. And I think turning out lower credit hour and lesser paramedics at this point is not in the best interest of the community or the public at large. Ultimately, medicine is not getting simpler. As our medical director group sat up here and said, there's more and more for them to learn all the time. We can barely get it in at the hours that we are. The solution is not less education. Frankly, in my opinion, the solution is not the status quo either. The solution is more education. That's it.
Any other comment, Mr. Nappage? Captain
Yes,
Nappage?
Should, or has the committee, should we draft a letter that would support the exemptions of all the colleges that are going to be requesting exemptions?
Okay. Lori, you said, Lori, Kelly, you said you have a motion?
I have a written motion, if you want me to read it.
Would you be willing to hear her motion, then move from there?
Well, of course. She's the
My
English
motion
major.
is that the committee recommend that Texas Department of State Health Services appeal to Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to consider an AAS in EMS, an exemption to the 60-hour rule based on the concept that that more education is required, that our accreditation requires more education, and that under the concept of plenary power.
Have a motion, do you have a second?
I'd second that.
Motion, second. Committee, discussion. Public comment. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. I will take that motion to GTAC. I believe we have this on our agenda for Monday. I will take that recommendation to them. In the meantime, I want to echo everyone's sentiments that testified today, and I think this is one of those issues that probably for most people it's pretty transparent and pretty easy to see that we've got to do something and we have to move forward. I mean, we can't just sit back and do a lot and do nothing. There's so much and a lot that we have to do. I would like to have some discussion on how we can help programs get there, and I would like to make that the topic of our January workshop to come together and figure out how we can help each other, just like we did with everything else that we do, whether it's accreditation or gap analysis or whatever. We made some visits around the state to take a look at some other programs and see what people are doing and figure out whether you want to move some whether it's just a matter of massaging the GIPWE, whether it's a matter of making your administration understand. Probably at Hill, I understand what your dean's saying is if we have a bunch of us coming in looking for the exemption. Certainly, I think if a rural area can do it in 68, and in a 68, and urban area needs 72, what have you, I think we should have the flexibility to be able to serve the community. So, committee, are you all okay if we put that on the agenda for January? And I think that is probably an entire, unless we find something else we need to put on there, that's an all-day lollipop for us to work on. What's that?
What are you calling it?
The January meeting?
What are you calling the topic?
Exemptions for continuation of 72-hour associate degree programs for EMS. And too, I really need to also reach out to some of our academic and colleagues to find out what they're doing, because it doesn't just affect us, it affects every program. A lot of this, again, it's all about money. as Jeff said earlier, you know, you've got people with a couple hundred hours with no degree, no major declared, and money keeps coming and coming and coming. And certainly we understand standardization, but at the same time, I think we've got to work pretty hard to make sure that we have given our due diligence to make sure that schools are able to function and put out the personnel that not only us as educators would be proud of, but medical directors, providers would be happy to hire, and that medical directors would love to see working in the back of the box. Ms. LaFevers?
Just to add to that discussion as well, at Grayson we did an analysis of moving all of our workforce education programs into the 60-hour method and 60-hour limit, and looking at the removal of core curriculum or the academic studies courses. And the impact to our college is a loss of nearly 200 credit hours per semester. And so imagine what that would do to our colleagues in academic studies as far as workload, course limits, you know, those kinds of things. So if, as Jody has requested, if we could engage our academic studies partners in this discussion, it would, I believe, help us.
Thank you very much. You guys want to wait till the end of the meeting to look at the date and time for our next one? That work? Okay. Let's do that now. No. Item 2 is looking at revisions to Title 25 of Texas Administrative Code regarding changes mandated by House Bill 3556 and Senate Bill 8 of this last legislative session. Before the meeting, Dudley and I had a quick little conference, as we quite often have little hall conferences. So I think to get us started on this one, I'm going to ask Dudley to come up and get us started, because we have copies of the bill, but what we don't have is what the EMS committee has moved and ready to push forward. So whether it's a combination of Dudley and Joe or whoever.
Okay. This is just like our show, you know, for the last 7. Good afternoon, or I guess it's almost evening. The rules itself have moved forward, and they were approved by the council on Thursday, the SHS council, to be public. There'll be still time for additional comments and finalize hopefully sometime next year, go into effect in June. Since the last meeting that we presented the rules to you, there were some changes made to them, and there were in 2 areas. The one was in the requirement for the applicant. It says that the applicant, the owner of the company, has to meet certain qualifications to run an EMS organization in Texas. And if you remember, we put some suggestions out there, recruitment and retention, and billing and dispatching. And one of the biggest concerns from the GTAC and from each committee was it was so vague. So we went back and refined that and clarified it. So there are 5 of them now. The one state, which was that they've read the EMS law. That's kind of there. The other 4 have been changed a little bit, and the recruitment and retention one is gone completely. And the reason, as much as that is important, what stayed is stuff that you can go right online and find courses very easy that you can grab and take, and they're nationally recognized programs. So when you read the new language, it says, provide proof that you have 1 year experience or have completed a nationally recognized program in dispatch, QA, EMS QA, medical control, and EMS billing. And all of them are national courses that you can take out there. It's very easy to qualify and quantify what you have done. So we've made that change, and that is in the bill that was before the council the other day. The other major change to it was there's a lot of questions from the air ambulances about being able to expand their services. So we put a line in there to exempt them from the expansion of services. As you know, there's a part of the law that requires approval from each municipality where you're going to provide the service. And it is our belief that probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense at the air level. Because if an air level can only service where they're located, the whole advantage of an air ambulance is that it can go much farther. So they still had to get approval from the municipality where they're going to set up their shop. Similar to if I wanted to start a new airline and I wanted to land in Austin Airport, I need approval from the airport to use that as my hub. So they would still need that approval for the hub, but then they are exempt from that expanding of services because, again, they're going to go farther than just where their hub is. So they're the two major changes that were made and accepted by the HHSC Council the other day. And it's not a done deal. It's open for comment now. They'll be published, I believe, December, January, somewhere around that period. And it'll be a 30-day comment period. We'll see what kind of comments come in on it. But we've done a lot of education. I just have to say publicly, and I know some people hate hearing this, Dudley did a great job with the EMS stakeholder meetings around the state. We attended 7 meetings, spoke to over 400 people, probably about a third of the ambulance service in Texas we've met with, just explaining this. And one of the things that we did as we went through this, we asked if there was anything we really missed, that this was so crazy out there in left field that it just doesn't make any sense. And I can tell you, we didn't get that back at all. I mean, everyone seemed very supportive of what we put together so far. Actually, the standards may be too low, but understanding that we are the first at doing this in the nation, and we're kind of making the road. So we wanted to make the bar low so that people can get over it. And then when we reopen the rules again, we may have to tweak it in the future. And there are some parts of this law that may not sustain at all when the legislators come back in the future. But I think we have good support statewide on this. And I guess the prime example is that we had the meeting last week and no one spoke out against it. Anything I missed, sir? Any questions?
You want to add, Dudley? No, not on the law. It's just that the stakeholder input helped craft a lot of those changes he was talking about, both in August when we were here, and as you know, the GTAC Council had a lot of concerns about some vagueness that was in there, and so they've done a good job of addressing that. And then the item I was going to speak on, I think it's actually agenda item number 3, which is the stakeholder input on how to further reduce fraud in the ambulance industry. And that was part of Senate Bill 8. Senate Bill 8 and House Bill 3556 made a lot of changes, but Senate Bill 8 asked for input from DSHS, HHSC, and the Texas Medical Board on how to further address fraud and from their own perspectives. And they're all going to get together and present one report to the legislature on January 1st. And so the time was of the essence to get busy, and the EMS committee stepped up and said that they would be willing to go out and meet with the stakeholders. So we held meetings in Houston, Harlingen, Amarillo, Dallas, Austin, and San Angelo since our last meeting in August. And like Joe said, we were in front of over 400 providers, probably a third of the EMS providers in the state. And we spent some time explaining the new rule changes, and then we spent a lot of time just listening to what it was they thought could be done better to improve the industry. And very, very eye-opening in a lot of areas. And after we got done, we sat down with all the notes from all those meetings, and we kind of grouped them up, and we came up with 5 kind of big topic areas that the stakeholders would like to see addressed going forward. And I'll just hit those highlights for you real quick. Number 1 was increased education and accountability on EMS personnel, healthcare facility personnel, Medicaid managed care personnel, and patients. So the patients piece was just strictly education on helping them understand, especially how they're Medicaid recipients or Medicare recipients, how those work and what that does and does not pay for, so that they can't be drawn into these fraud schemes unknowingly, which will help reduce it. And when they see it, they can report it as the government asks them to do. But the other ones are to try to get things better in order. Right now we're holding the agency accountable for all of these issues. But there are times where the EMS personnel, there's EMS personnel working for these fraudulent agencies. And a lot of times the choice is, do I say something because I know this is wrong, or maybe I don't know it's wrong. Maybe we need to educate them on the rules and regs so they'll know it's wrong. And then they say, I know it's wrong, but do I report it and lose my job? Because I really need this job. And if I don't report it, I'm not really at risk for anything. So we want to put a little risk on the field provider. and thinking that the choice is between their patch or their job, that they'll choose their patch every day, and tied with that is whistleblower protection, those kind of things. And then on facilities and the Medicaid managed care groups, it's to help them follow the law of the reimbursement laws when they're requesting ambulance transportation. For all over the state, no matter what corner of the state we were in, we heard something's got to be done to educate and help these facilities be held responsible when they ask us to do things that are inappropriate. Because they're asking ambulance agencies to do it, and that does not excuse the ambulance agency for billing for it and getting paid wrongly. That doesn't excuse that. But there are times where political pressures or business pressures, more so in the non-metro areas than in the metro areas, where they're saying, well, if you don't do it, I mean, there's a county between Houston and San Antonio. Their nursing home said, well, if you don't come get this patient by ambulance, because they were going to offer to do it in a wheelchair, they said, if you don't come get this patient by ambulance, we'll just call somebody who will. And about 2.5 hours later, was a provider out of Houston showed up in that county to move that patient. And so that is stressing relationships. It's stressing in these times where it's hard just to survive as an EMS transport agency, no matter how you're formed. It's stressing that survivability. And so it was, can we do something to help that? So that was a huge topic everywhere we went. So next, number 2, the second biggest area was increase the number, ability, and processes of the DSHS EMS regulatory personnel. We're asking for more cops. It sounds weird when we say we want more police, but we want more police. And so the theory behind this is that potentially we have enough rules right now to really regulate the industry well, but we're not enforcing them. So if you live in a subdivision and you get city council to put your speed limit at 20 miles an hour, that's great. But if there's never an officer sitting there, nobody's going to go 20 miles an hour down the hill without speed bumps. So we're asking for more help in doing that. Especially, well, all over the state we heard, we don't need more rules, we need the rules we have enforced, we need more people out here. And so we're asking, the stakeholders feel that it'd be huge to have more enforcement personnel, and then changing some of the things they do and requiring certain things of them. Like one of the things that has come up was you get a new license as a transport provider, you're brand new in the business. Instead of waiting a year or two before you come by, within 6 months mandatorily there'll be an unannounced inspection, and it's going to be at the place of business, and they're going to want to see everything. So that we make sure that what you got in business to do, you're actually doing. It's very similar to how they do hospital licensing and those type of things. So some other things, there's a lot of requirements in the new law. One of the things they suggested was that we develop a list of deadly sins. You know the deadly sins list on the criminal background? Develop something very similar in EMS regulation. And if an agency commits one of those deadly sins, if they're going to be allowed to stay in business and keep their license, their relicensing goes back and takes in all those things that are in the new law now that makes it very difficult, and you have to really work hard to get relicensed. And they have to go back basically and start at square one, and the exemptions that are in there for a lot of agencies in the state, either due to their tenure or their business structure, would no longer apply to that. So, let's see, that was that one. Number 3 was the stakeholders strongly believe, I think that's a fair word, strongly believe. Some of them we thought they were going to riot when we asked about this. That there should be one type of license for all ambulance transportation. That we should not attempt to divide the industry by emergency or non-emergency licensing for a whole host of reasons. But everybody felt strongly we should have one license type. And it has to do with what definition are you going to use of emergency versus non-emergency? Is it going to be the billing definition? Is it going to be that we go lights and sirens? Is it going to be some criticality of the patient? Because all of those things come into play when you say emergency versus non-emergency. And so then the other piece was what would happen with one side of that license or the other. If we don't have more EMS regulators out there, even if you split it, there's still going to have to be focus put on one side or the other. And the stakeholders really felt that focus would stay on the public safety 911 side because of its public safety mission and the fact that it's a high profile thing, and there's a lot, we've got to make sure somebody dials 911, somebody shows up. And so that there could be a temptation to pool regulation or put less regulation on the non-emergency provider, which if you look at the fraud is where the overall majority of that fraud rests. So the other piece that came out in that was not only to have one type of license, but for the state of Texas to look at regulating the other types of medical transport. Texas has outlawed what they call stretcher cars or stretcher vans or gurney cars, but a lot of stakeholders feel that in today's age of reimbursement, there's an appropriate place for that if there's regulation on what they can and cannot do, and if that is regulated well. The other one was wheelchair transport. Wheelchair transport is not regulated. It's regulated sometimes on the local level, much like taxi cabs are, but it's not regulated. And so are people trying to put patients that need an ambulance in a wheelchair transport vehicle? Are they doing that safely? What's happening when folks are falling out of those things? All those things that happen in that world is we really felt, you know what we should do is not try to break up the medical transportation. We should be more inclusive and bring other medical transportation pieces in, because it's becoming a very fuzzy thing in reimbursement, and we need to have as many options as possible to move these folks appropriately to wherever it is that they need to go. Number 4 was making some updates, enhancements, and refinements to the changes that resulted that Joe just talked about from House Bill 3556 and Senate Bill 8. There's some exemptions in there, and the word is agencies that are directly operated by a governmental entity, and there's a lot of folks all over the state that feel that language should be expanded to take in the not-for-profit volunteer agencies. A lot of those agencies are not operated by a governmental entity, and so these things which were aimed at the for-profit providers they're going to have to be enforced upon them, and so they're trying to figure out how they can do that, and it's believed that the intent of the legislation wasn't to do that, and so there's some suggested language that the stakeholders came up with about, if they're not-for-profit, maybe they're contracted with a governmental agency and they're primarily do 911 service, that exemption could apply to them. And then the other piece, which I was happy to see, is that across the state, the additional requirements for the administrator of record of the agency, especially the parts about having to have a background check, having to take an administrator of record course that would delve into all the laws and regulations that govern an EMS agency, and the 8 hours of CE every year. There's overwhelming support across the state that should apply to every administrator of record of every EMS agency, and that governmental entities should not be exempt from that. And then lastly, was to increase requirements on legitimate business practices. Several of these came up throughout our journey across the state, and I think we got 4 bullet points under there. One is that all providers have to supply proof of ownership or lease of a legitimate place of business, so that when DSHS comes out to do their inspection, they don't find a mobile mini storage unit in the middle of a vacant lot, that it's actually a business location, and that there can only be one provider at that business location. Also show proof of ownership or lease of the equipment that they need to conduct their business at the level they're getting licensed. So if they're an ALS or if they're an MICU service, they've got to show that they own cardiac monitors. They've got to show that they own AEDs. They've got to show that they own stretchers, that they own or lease, or all these could be leased too, or they own or lease the ambulances. All that stuff needs to be proven to DSHS when you get relicensed every 2 years. It's not that hard to do. We all keep it in a file, but that prevents let me borrow that AED, DSHS is coming by tomorrow. You stick it on your ambulance, they leave, you carry it off, it never sees the inside of your ambulance ever again. And then lastly, was one that came up, and that was to develop and we stuck the 5-year plan on, but a medium-range plan that would require all EMS providers in the state of Texas to be in some form of electronic patient care record in that time frame. A lot of EMS agencies already are. There are some that aren't, and that would be a hurdle that would have to be overcome about how we get some of those in there, especially those that can't afford it. But the thought is the more that we can make electronic, the better that it will help folks that are trying to pursue fraudulent providers, and will help those of us who are trying to do it well to be able to state our claim and to be able to track our data to make sure that we are being compliant. So that was really the 5 things, the 5 big broad areas. Earlier today I sent that draft to all of you. If your email address on the web is correct, you have it, you can read through it. If you have any questions, you can ask any member of the EMS committee. We were all over the state, had a great time doing it. And really, folks out there are really interested in either abating the effects of some of this on them who are difficult in resources, or trying to make sure that we better our industry, that we do more than just try to cut out the bad, but we also try to better the good as well. So,
Questions, comments for Dudley? Dudley, I just want to say that I think for years many of us have asked why not, because there have been a lot of issues that as educators when people come to different schools saying, I don't need you to teach that, I just need somebody who can occupy a spot. I just need someone, having been on the other end of medical control where the FBI did show up at my office one day to ask me questions about a provider for things that they'd done outside the realm. I think, why do you think it took so long? Was it just finally the finances? Was it finally it became overwhelming? Or what do you think the impetus for this was?
I don't know. I think DSHS has been fighting the fight longer than just about anybody. They've seen the problem. It's tough because we live in a world, and don't get me wrong, please, I'm very conservative and I wholeheartedly support this, but we live in a world where we don't want to infringe upon people's rights to conduct business. And so that makes it very difficult to balance between those who are trying to do it correctly, but increased regulation is going to cause them harm, versus those who are taking advantage of the fact that we don't have increased regulation. And so I think it finally came to the point where it was in enough of the headlines, and Texas was, I mean, Joe heard about us in Pennsylvania, so I mean, we were famous. The fraud was at such a level that nobody could escape it, and the legislators, the one group of people we didn't want to have to address this, addressed it. And they cut through it with a knife, and now we're trying to patch where we're bleeding and discard the bodies of those that it's going to take out. I think it's great. I agree. I think it's great. It's long overdue. It's just where we go from here. I think this is going to help guide where we go in the future as they sit down and say, okay, it's been 2 years. What have these two laws done to the industry?
Is there anything you needed from us? Motion or just?
No, we're just going to be taking it to GTAC. It's on several of the EMS-centric agendas, and so I just wanted everybody to know, since we took that charge from GTAC that we'd go do it, I wanted y'all to know what it was we were going to be presenting Monday night.
Good job, thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Chairman, we don't want to forget our friends out in western Texas also. We did go out, it wasn't an official meeting, we went out to Border Rack out to El Paso to make sure we had input from them also in this process.
Good, good.
And our state EMS director, being new to the state, drove to El Paso for
I'm not laughing at you. With you.
Joe, I know that where you're from, when we say it's down the road, we don't mean down the road. It's,
Jane did warn me, but it did give me a new perspective to when you talk about rural, now you talk about frontier EMS. It's a whole different environment.
I have 2 words for you, Joe. Southwest Airlines, okay?
That would have been the easy way. It was worth doing it. Really.
Good deal. Good deal.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I know recently we looked at increasing or adding hours for ethics training, like many other of our professions have. Would this not be the prime subject of the ethics training, or a good portion of what should be in that curriculum for ethics training? You don't document a patient had to be carried to a stretcher when they got up and walked to it, no matter what your boss tells you. You know, explaining the Whistleblower Act, explaining the fact that, yes, you can say, sorry, I'm not going to write that down because I'm not going to lose my patch, but when I walk out the door, you may lose your license. So is that something that has the education committee that we can look at, even in the times when we're having to cut hours to make a degree, but maybe in our continuing education packets?
You know, yes, I think that 2 of the things that it's really hit all of us, and there are 2 words, and sometimes I ask students to define these, and quite often I'm shocked. I'll ask them to define ethics, and I'll ask them to define integrity. And go back and ask some of your students those 2 questions, and I'm always amazed at how difficult it is for those questions to be answered close to appropriate. I spent 13 years of my life over at Methodist Dallas, and I remember at one point administration spent a lot of money on what was called visions and values training, and everybody from the janitor on up had to go. Everybody had to go. And I had asked them for some money for a project, and they told me no because we had to do this training, and it was about $500,000 worth, and I only wanted $80,000. So I'm like, can't you do it with 420? And they said no. So when it was all said and done, I was amazed at how many people didn't know how to say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, thank you, please, excuse me, and I'm sorry. And I was amazed at how many people had to be trained to hold an elevator that didn't know that was the right thing to do. I was amazed at the number of people who didn't understand that in healthcare, to tell someone radiology's down the hall versus taking 45 seconds out of your day to walk them to radiology made a huge difference on evaluations of that facility and how people looked at it who had been there, who really started saying, you know, that's one of the nicest places to go because everyone there is so nice. I don't think that we figured out sometimes you can have a deficit in something, but if you're nice about it, you're treated a little bit different. So I think certainly for us to take a look at ethics and integrity and to make sure that that's instilled in curriculums and look at that as part of CE is certainly a worthy topic that we can add to January to figure out if it's something that this group, and also I'd like to take a look with Dudley and see what they're doing so that if it's something that they already have done that we can add, if that's okay with the group.
So with the conversations about less hours and more stuff in the curriculum, and I was trying just to bust through the big topics so we didn't have to go through the whole 10-page report here in front of God and everybody, but a key piece of ethics training is that they've got to know what's wrong. And so two of the recommendations in here that I'll read to you specifically on the education and accountability on EMS personnel are education on the laws and regulations related to EMS billing practices, medical necessity, and proper use of the state's medical assistance program should be required in all initial EMS certification programs from EMT through paramedic. And then an EMS jurisprudence exam should be developed and implemented for all EMS certified personnel at their initial certification. So we need to teach them what the rules are, and then we need to test that they know what those rules are, and then we can hold them accountable when they violate those rules.
Is there any other place that's already done this, Dudley? Any other state that we know of that we can kind of look at? And
There is in Texas on several other professions.
Yeah.
I think nursing has one, and I'm not sure who all else here in Texas does, but and there is some thought that may come about because of the focus on fraud and DSHS going through sunset, that may be something that comes out. And that's where that actually came from in some of our stakeholder discussions was this may be something that's coming, because how do you hold them accountable if we're not teaching them what those things are?
Yeah.
You know, if we don't teach them what's wrong, how do they know it's wrong? Because not all of it's intuitive.
Unfortunately not.
And you know, we can't forget it's not everybody. It's a small group that doesn't understand what ethics is all about, and we shouldn't, you know, brush a big brush against everybody. You know, I had the opportunity to go to Fort Stockton a couple weeks ago to take a tour when I was out in that part of the state, and as we were there standing just talking, this little lady comes in and asks us for the medic, and I wish I could remember the medic's name, and I can't. And she just wanted to give him a big hug and thank him. And he didn't give her good care. I mean, he did meet her and all that stuff, but her sewing machine had to be repaired in another town where he lived, and he brought it in and dropped it off at her house for him. And I said, you guys staged that just so I saw that, didn't you? Is this like his grandmother or something? But it wasn't, and it was just he knew this needed to happen, and he made it happen. He dropped it off at her house. So, you know, it's kind of just sometimes just being human.
Absolutely. Any other comments? We will take the recommendation to GTAC for the exemption for allied health care, but especially EMS programs. We've taken a look at the House Bill 3556 and Senate Bill 8, and as well as provided opportunity for stakeholder input for the non-emergency changes regarding the law of fraud and waste. Anyone have any announcements? I know there are a couple of you that said you want to talk about something today. Any of you have any announcements from the public first? Okay, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but I know one person had asked, so now it's your time. No? Okay. Any announcements from committee? Let's look.
Thank y'all. It's been fun.
Huh?
I said thank y'all. It's been fun working with you.
We have to look at the next work group meeting. And guys, let me throw a couple of things out at you. One, thank you all very, very much Had a little illness we had to deal with over the past meeting, and the past couple of months I've had to kind of pull away to take care of me, but I think we're back and we're good to go. So family's better, so I think we're going to be a little bit more involved. But thank you for your patience. Every now and then when you get over 50, you got to start doing stuff to take care of yourself, and sometimes it means you got to pull away a little bit. But thank you all very, very much for your help and support. With the things on our January agenda, including ethics and integrity, in looking at that for CE training and for initial training, along with concepts of flexibility. Gang, can we look at a date sometime in January? Traditionally, it's been on a Friday.
I propose January 14th.
That is a Tuesday, right?
That is,
Is that a Tuesday?
I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong calendar.
It's okay.
Pardon me.
It's okay.
January 10th. January 10th.
I can't think of anything, but, okay. January 10th, does this work for committee? Anybody have anything that they can't do? Any public comment? We would love to, especially as we start to work on everybody here and anyone that you know that would be interested in these topics, we would love to have their assistance. I'm going to ask that we TBA the location. I've had a couple people ask me, not that we're going to go back and start traveling again, but for a couple, we might have to look at, see, here we go. I've been vaccinated against that, so we will. I will give you all a TBA. I do need to just contact a couple of folks, and if that offer's still open, at least give them the opportunity to go between Houston and Austin, and possibly one other to take a look at. 9 to 3 work.
Jody, if I can add one thing to January's meeting, it does have to do with the 60 hours in a way. And that is the Texas Administrative Code under Education, the Higher Education Coordinating Board. It is Title 19, Part 1, Chapter 4, Subchapter C, Rule 4.54. I've got it here.
You're making that up, right?
Subchapter C, Rule 4.54, and that's regarding the Texas Success Initiative, TSI initiative, regarding exemptions, exceptions, and waivers.
Okay.
More specifically, item in this rule of A7.
Bingo.
Which relates to a student who is enrolled in a certificate program of 1 year or less, meaning a level 1 certificate, 42 or fewer semester credit hours at a junior college. State college is exempt from TSI assessment, which means that we cannot assess students prior to entry into our certificate programs. We cannot assess reading, writing, arithmetic.
3 R's.
Okay.
Can I just say something real quick?
Deidre, yes,
I know
ma'am.
at Hill for AMP 1, which is required for our, we've got 3 levels. We got the certificate of completion, which is the intermediate certificate of technology, because it's greater than 42 hours for paramedic, and then the associate degree. For our AMP 1, it does require the reading TSI, and I don't know if that's a rule thing or if that's a.
If that anatomy and physiology is part of a certificate, the student may not be assessed. So that person who has not been assessed is sitting in the very same classroom with somebody who has been assessed.
Okay. Then Hill's doing it across the board for nursing, paramedic, whatever, regardless, I guess, of.
Right.
the fine print, so
And
I didn't know.
I do believe that there is some college executive interpretation. I have seen some interpretation documents from the coordinating board. Unfortunately, I couldn't bring them up in time for this. But the interpretation that I saw from the coordinating board a couple of months ago was that we could not even use things like HESI, FISDAP, any of those pre-entrance exams.
Everyone keep one thing in mind, and that is that whenever we have agenda items, these agenda items have to be cleared by the chair of GTAC. So when we will send all of these to them. So if something does or does not get off, I keep reminding people that we have to send those in 30 days prior to minimum. And sometimes we have to rewrite them. Phil's been pretty good at banging me in the head to make sure that we rewrite them so that the general public can look at it, where a lot of this will make sense to us, but we will make sure that those get to Phil. Right, Phil? Right. So that he doesn't rewrite all of them every time. There are people and things that come into your life, and many of you out there have come into my life and been into my life for years, and it's like family and it's like team. And when you have people who are on your team, and the one thing that I've found about this committee, regardless of the composition, regardless of who's on it or who's not, this group has always worked well together to try to accomplish the goals. Sometimes we look at what's ahead of us and we think, how are we going to get it done? And the one thing with people who are on this committee and people who support this committee and people who are in favor of EMS education becoming all it can be, it is so very, very nice to have everyone here. Every year some people will roll on and some people will roll off. I've had the opportunity to work with Captain Nappage for probably 14, 15 years now, and he has brought a lot to this committee. He'll be rolling off this session, but I know he'll still continue to come. He's added a lot of flavor, a lot of value, a lot of insight, represented himself, SACSI, firefighters, and paramedics well. Gary Bonewall, sitting to my left from Houston Community, has done the same. It's always nice when you have people who, regardless of whether they're on a committee or not, will help. I know all we have to do is pick up the phone and thank them, pick up the phone and call them. And certainly today, thanking them, we have a letter from the chair of both GTAC and the Education Committee and a certificate from the Texas Department of State Health Services thanking them for their time, their knowledge, and just to be quite honest, their sacrifice. Because as you all know, every committee here works really hard. We always have things on them. It's not just although I did find out when I wasn't here, you guys had the quickest meeting we've ever had. I think it was like less than 3 minutes, done, poof, and gone. So you guys got a lot of stuff done in that time period, and I really, really appreciate it. But my hat's off, and a special thank you to Captain Nappage and to Gary. And I'd like to present each of them here. On behalf of GTAC, thank you for your service to the Governor's EMS and Trauma Advisory Council as part of the Education Committee. Proud that you've taken part in shaping the future of EMS and trauma in Texas. We hope that you feel that your input in GTAC is provided any time and look forward to still working with you in the future. Gary, thank you. Captain Nappage, saying thank you for your service to the Governor's EMS and Trauma Advisory Council as part of this committee. We know that you will continue to serve, that you'll be here. We look forward to working with you in the future also. Thanks, sir. Thank you, again. Have we missed anything? Yes, sir.
Eddie Walker with Life EMS Academy in El Paso. Just a couple of things. One, at the last committee, or at the last meeting, I had talked about trying to get an exemption and asking the exemption for the state for an exemption for the military paramedic folks that we have in our class. I want to thank Jane and Joe and the other folks at DSHS for giving me that exemption. It was very nice to be able to work with the state and get something that I needed. I want to give you an update on that.
Eddie, let me back up. What was the exemption?
The exemption
exactly?
is that we are having difficulty in getting these 27 paramedic students from the military having 6 months to do class, adequate rotation time on the ambulances in El Paso County. The only place that we have is Life Ambulance. We're unable to get them on the El Paso Fire Department, so the thought was if they could go across the border into Las Cruces with an EMS service there, we would be able to get them their rotations and their expectations done in the amount of time that we needed it to get done. So I contacted the folks at the EMS Bureau in New Mexico, and I finally just hit a brick wall that I could not get through. They gave me an explanation and a reason as to why these students couldn't do their rotations in New Mexico, and I thought that it makes perfect sense, and it may be something I really think that we need to take a look at here in Texas. What New Mexico requires is that any student from out of state, and they will take any student from any state, as long as that student has a state certification card at the EMT level if they are paramedics. And if they have come from either a program that is accredited or seeking accreditation at the paramedic level. The reason for that is because with the state certification, they've got a tie to hold that person accountable for anything that may happen. The National Registry certification, they say, is just that. It is a certification. It is not a license to work. The state certification is the license to work, and I think that every one of us in this room would agree to that. And I'm sure that all of y'all are familiar with the rules that says that for an advanced EMT or paramedic class that they have to have state certification or basic National Registry. And I think that it may be time that we need to take a look at that and require that any student that does any rotations at the advanced or the paramedic level in the state of Texas have a state certification. If they come from Alaska down to Texas, they have to have an Alaska certification as an EMT so that the state has the same kind of hold on them for accountability as students that may be going into New Mexico to do those rotations.
Can you clarify for me, are you saying you want an Alaska student to have a Texas certification?
No, in their home state. They need a certification in their home state.
Just want to clarify for my notes.
Okay?
How would we do that for EMT students? Because they wouldn't have a state cert. I understand.
That is correct. And the rule as it stands now, I think, for the EMT would be just fine. Because I would not see sending any EMT students into New Mexico to do any rotations. Right. Okay. I wouldn't see that occurring at all. It could pose a challenge if we continue to do military paramedic classes. However, with enough planning and identification of those people getting into that paramedic class, for example, we're looking at doing another one in January. In December, what we could do is get those potential students in to the classroom, have them fill out a Texas application. We put it in one bundle, we send it to the state, we take these guys down after they've completed their FAST application, we get them fingerprinted, we make sure that that stuff gets sent off. Sometime around February, maybe the early part of March, when they're ready to do rotations, they have their Texas certification. They can then go over into New Mexico and get the experiences that they need. And I think it's a little something, you know, that's not that major that we can do for these men and women that serve our country.
So are we talking about just doing this for military applicants or any
No,
applicants?
Anybody,
Okay.
anybody that does, do away with the requirement, the part that says or National Registry certification, and say they must have a Texas or other state certification to be able to do rotations in the state of Texas.
So New Mexico's fine as long as they have a Texas cert in their pocket and they have an agreement between you and whoever you're going to, they're fine with taking students
That
from
is
Texas?
correct.
Okay.
They certainly are. Second thing that I'd like to mention is that when I saw this thing about the college going from 72 to 60 hours. And what I want to say is, please, folks, for those of you that are from colleges, let me finish before you start throwing tomatoes, okay, or eggs or anything else. I looked at that from 72 to 60, and I thought, well, now the colleges are under pressure. How are they going to react to that? They're losing funding. What I started doing when I was sitting there listening to this, it occurred to me, when I added up the number of hours in my program, I have 1,152 hours. That's about 72 credit hours. And I thought, man, how could I possibly do this in 960 hours? Based on the last test that my guys just did, I'm thinking about starting my paramedic class over with those guys. I mean, the A&P stuff, come on. Anyway, I couldn't and I wouldn't want to do that 960 hours. I think that it is important that we keep that education that we have now for those hours. And it's going to be even more of a challenge to get that exemption. And then if in the future, if more hours have to be added on, how are those hours going to be added on? Where do you draw the line for the maximum number of hours for any associate degree? Another thing that I thought of while sitting there is if you do 60 hours, that's 960 hours. That's 40 hours less than what Cmte says is a minimum for an accredited paramedic program. What happens to the accreditation at that point for these programs if they're not meeting that minimum Cmte standard? So I think that that's something else that we need to take a look at, maybe add to when asking for that exemption.
Okay.
That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Eddie.
Mr. Chairman, I just,
Yes, sir.
so you guys don't go off into a bunch of different directions. I've had a meeting with Oklahoma already, and we're meeting just to discuss concepts about being able to ride in other states and all that kind of stuff. So I'll keep reporting back to you on the progress. We want to work out the concepts first. We need to bring legal involved. We got to check all the laws and all that kind of stuff. But I've heard the message, and I think in concept we both agree, at least in Oklahoma, and I've talked to New Mexico. I haven't spoken to the other two yet. But we're both in agreement that we should be able to do this without too much trouble. We've got to make all the legal stuff work. So I'll keep you informed as we're moving forward.
Glad to hear you all are able to work through that to help him and any other provider who has that going, so great.
We want to get a permanent solution, not just piecemealing it as we go along.
Okay, perfect, great. Anything else? Thank you all so very much for your help. Need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're done, thank you.